Beyond the Gates spoilers, December 2nd. Derek falls into despair and turns to Andre for help. In the Tuesday, December 2nd episode of Beyond the Gates, Danny and Bill revisit a scorching moment from their past, leaving Naomi and Chelsea unsettled. Elsewhere, Haley and Randy discuss escalating their murderous scheme, while Andre is pulled toward a dangerous, unholy alliance. Key points: Danny and Bill's trip down memory lane creates unexpected tension for Naomi and Chelsea. Haley and Randy consider taking their deadly plot to the next level. Andre is confronted with a surprising offer that could threaten everything he and Danny have just built. Bill stood in the shadowed strip of darkness behind the trees lining the gates of Fairmont Crest, feeling like an outsider sneaking a look at the life that once should have been his. Warm golden light spilled out from the Dupree estate, carrying with it laughter, the clink of glassware, and the bustling, familiar noise of Thanksgiving that drifted all the way out to the parking area like a luxury he no longer had the right to touch. Inside, Danny moved through the crowd, her simple yet elegant dress, allowing her to blend seamlessly into the sophisticated setting while still retaining the softness she used to have. Andre stood beside her, one hand resting lightly at her back in a discreetly possessive gesture. Polite enough that no one questioned it, but more than enough to make Bill's heart twist in his chest. Naomi and Chelsea sat at a table further in, near Anita, while Vernon refilled their juice as if those two girls had long since become a natural part of this family. All of it had once been the image of a future Bill had imagined for himself. Danny by his side in a warm home, their children gathered between them, no blurry dividing line between old and new. Now, as he watched through the window, he understood with cruel clarity that he was the one who had shattered that picture, and that realization was the knife that cut deeper than anything he was seeing in front of him. After the party, as the lights in the Dupree home gradually dimmed, Bill still had an entire evening ahead with his two daughters and the woman he had once called his wife in every sense of the word. Time with his family after Thanksgiving became a convenient curtain. He could pull over his own selfish choices. He told himself he was doing the right thing, that the girls needed a father who showed up regularly, that Danny, despite stepping into a new marriage with Andre, still had to maintain stability with him for Naomi and Chelsea's sake. But beneath those neatly stacked justifications, Bill knew he was using fatherly devotion as a shield, a way to tug Danny back into his orbit, even if only for a few hours each week. He watched the way she bent down to retie Naomi's shoelaces, the way her hand smoothed gently over Chelsea's hair when the girl frowned after losing a game, and every small gesture became a merciless reminder of what he had thrown away. In his memory, there was a blazing moment he and Danny could never quite outrun, and this very week had unintentionally yanked it back into vivid, painful focus. That moment hadn't been some sugary kiss or a perfectly romantic night straight out of an easy love story. It was a rainy night when they fought so fiercely it felt as though the whole house was rattling under the force of slammed doors, accusations, and old sins dragged brutally into the light. Just before everything shattered for good, they were pulled toward each other by that strange gravitational pull reserved for people who once loved too deeply and hurt each other too badly. Fury turned into desire, desire melted into surrender, and in the moment their bodies tangled together, they were trying to punish and save each other at the same time. They never said it out loud afterward, but both knew it was the last time they truly belonged to each other as two raw, unarmored human beings. No titles, no obligations, just the explosion of everything that had never really been forgiven. So when Danny and Bill, in a rare moment of shared weakness, let that memory slip into an otherwise casual conversation on a quiet afternoon after Thanksgiving, Naomi and Chelsea immediately sensed that something was wrong. It wasn't that they understood everything. It was the way their parents' eyes changed, warmth and resentment woven together in a kind of emotional code. The girls couldn't name it, but they were sharp enough to recognize danger when they felt it. Naomi, who had been trying hard to adjust to the new family orbiting around Andre, suddenly felt herself stranded between two worlds. She could see that Danny softened when she was with Bill, gentler than when she stood next to Andre at refined dinner parties. Chelsea, meanwhile, began to develop a new kind of fear. The fear that she was nothing more than the bridge forcing the adults to keep meeting, that every hug, every holiday, every family photo was just another piece of a secret map that would eventually spell out, Mom and Dad are getting back together, and leave all the new families in ruins. The more anxious they became, the more alert they grew, listening in on every comment, watching every touch, quietly collecting a slow, simmering anger with nowhere to go. When Bill watched his daughters laughing in the yard, posing for photos with Danny, while still clutching the presents Uncle Andre had given them, the thing that hurt him most wasn't just that Danny now belonged to another man. Worse was the fact that Naomi and Chelsea were learning how to live without him at the center. They could survive inside the embrace of another family, while he was the one who had pushed them into a world where they'd be forced to choose sides. Far too young. Across town, Haley's jealousy was crystallizing into a cold, ruthless shape. On paper, she was the current wife, the woman who shared Bill's bed, his meals, his supposed future. But each time he called to say he would stay a little longer with the girls, each late-night text claiming that Danny and the kids needed him during this transition, clawed at her pride. She understood that men had pasts, that fathers had responsibilities, but understanding was one thing. Standing by while her husband only truly softened, relaxed, and warmed when he was with his old family was another thing entirely. From the moment she agreed to partner with Randy in the plan to make Bill disappear, Haley had always told herself it was about the future, about money, about seizing the chance to escape the long shadow of the Duprees, a family that had always seen her as the woman who came second, never quite good enough. But the slow pace of his gradual poisoning was driving her insane. Her heart couldn't bear watching Bill still standing, still alive, still moving effortlessly between two worlds, still reserving the best of himself for Danny and the girls. In their next deadly conversation, everything shifted. Randy recounted, in a disturbingly calm voice, how the mixture he had given Haley was beginning to do its work. Subtle symptoms burning in the stomach, bouts of insomnia, flashes of unreasonable irritability, weren't just stress or age. But vague signs were no longer enough for Haley. Every time she heard Bill talking softly to Naomi or Danny, his voice dropping, turning tender. Every time she saw his schedule fill with yet another family dinner after Thanksgiving, she felt as though boiling water had been poured over her. She started pushing Randy to increase the dosage, to change tactics, to turn the slow kill into a clean, sudden blow disguised as a heart attack, an accident. Anything as long as it ended the sight of him walking back to another woman under the excuse of, for the kids. Randy listened, but to him, Haley's impatience was just another variable to manage. He wanted his share of the money, wanted to be sure he wouldn't be cut out once Bill was gone. But there was another layer of motive he never shared with her. There were old stories about the Hamiltons and the Duprees, old debts that had never been collected, times when Randy's family had been used as collateral damage in shady deals no one ever mentioned in the press. Bill's disappearance would not just be a payout from an insurance policy. It would be Randy's way of returning the humiliation his family had swallowed generations ago. That was why he didn't want it to end in one rash, jealous outburst. He needed time to make sure there was no way back, to guide the evidence in the direction he wanted. But the pressure from Haley was cracking their fragile alliance. She was slowly losing control, not only of the plan to kill her husband but of herself. And that instability made Randy start to consider which side he would choose if the whole scheme blew up. Meanwhile, in another corner of the DMV, Danny was trying to convince herself she was living the life she chose. The honeymoon with Andre had been a perfectly packaged sedative. Trips away, long quiet nights, promises of tomorrow, a ring that caught the light in each other's eyes. Andre was a grown, steady man, someone capable of holding even the most complicated parts of her without judging. But when she spent time with Bill and their daughters, Danny felt another layer of emotion rise up, stubborn and dangerous. It was no longer simple love. It was a binding that had been stretched so far. It warped into something else, part parental duty, part leftover addiction. Whenever her marriage to Andre wobbled, even over something small, she unconsciously drifted back toward Bill's orbit, as if only when she stood between him and the girls could she see a complete version of herself. She would never admit that, not even to herself, but the fact that she could still vividly recall that blazing night with Bill proved that some doors she believed permanently locked were still slightly ajar. From his position as the new husband, Andre tried hard to be magnanimous. He told himself that loving a woman who once had a family meant accepting her past, accepting that another man would remain a constant presence in her story. He repeated the vows and promises from their honeymoon, believing that their new foundation was sturdy enough to withstand outside tremors. But in the quiet moments, when Danny's phone lit up with Bill's name and she stepped out of the room to answer, a slow-burning feeling of being dismissed, of being second best, flared in Andre's chest. So when an invitation into an unholy alliance appeared, it wasn't just about power or money. It was a chance to pour every bit of his unspoken resentment into a system that had always kept him in the number 2 spot. The temptation came from an unexpected source. Haley herself, in a conveniently accidental meeting she had carefully arranged. She emphasized the danger Bill posed to Danny and the children, talked about his instability, about the risk that he would drag everyone into the abyss because he refused to cut ties with the past. Haley never revealed her true plan, but she planted a seed in Andre's mind. That Bill's disappearance, in some twisted way, might be the best outcome for everyone. Andre left that encounter with his thoughts in chaos. He was not a killer, nor a man who easily stepped into dirty conspiracies, but the idea that Haley was starting to picture him as part of a scenario where Bill gets removed for Danny's safety shook him. He wanted to protect Danny from the chaos Bill always brought with him, yet he felt sick at the thought of becoming a tool in a jealous, greedy wife's scheme. That inner conflict made him pull back, and Danny could feel that distance, even when his words remained gentle. She began to wonder whether this new relationship was strong enough to hold her, or whether she was trapped between two men who both wielded love as a weapon of control. While the grown-ups moved their pieces quietly, on the board, Derek became living proof of how a broken heart can wreck an entire life. After his relationship with Ashley fell apart, he plunged into a stretch of days with no anchor. First, he told himself all he needed was time. A few drinks with friends, a few sleepless nights, the usual fallout of a breakup. But the pain never thinned. It grew heavy, saturating every morning he woke up, every shift at work, every street he used to walk down with Ashley. Gradually, Derek began showing up late, missing meetings, making mistakes he never would have tolerated in himself before. Alcohol stopped being a pleasure and became a flimsy life raft, numbing him just long enough so he wouldn't have to think about Ashley walking out of his life and possibly laughing with someone else. Now, Jacob was the first to notice the shadow spreading in Derek's eyes. During their rare hangouts, he picked up on the way Derek sidestepped conversations about work, avoided any talk about the future. There was something in Derek's gaze that made Jacob suddenly understand this wasn't ordinary post-breakup sadness anymore. It was the thin ledge where a man starts to believe he doesn't deserve anything at all. One time when Derek failed to show up and turned off his phone, Jacob drove to his place, only to find him sprawled on the sofa in a fog of alcohol and pills, the TV blaring to no one. That was the moment Jacob knew he had to act before things slipped completely out of control. When Derek finally agreed to go see Andre, it wasn't just a meeting between a patient and a doctor or two casual acquaintances. Derek came in carrying a warped hope that Andre, with all his authority, reason, and calm, could hand him a shortcut back to Ashley. He wanted Andre to analyze, decode, even intervene, to help him find the weak point in the wall Ashley had thrown up between them. At the same time, Andre, haunted by his own conflicts with Danny and poisoned by Haley's insidious hints, found himself sitting across from a man ready to throw everything away just to reclaim a lost love. Derek collapsing over Ashley became a distorted mirror of what might await Andre himself if he lost control, if he let Danny drag him into the whirlwind with Bill at its center. All of them, Bill, Danny, Naomi, Chelsea, Haley, Randy, Andre, Derek, Jacob were moving in intersecting orbits, each carrying old wounds, hidden ambitions, and unnamed fears of loss. Bill used his love for his children as a hiding place from the consequences of his selfish choices. Danny used her commitment to Andre as a blanket over her wavering every time Bill appeared. Naomi and Chelsea were slowly losing faith in the adults around them. Haley wrapped her jealousy and bruised ego in the language of self-protection and future security. Randy dressed family hatred up as financial calculation. Andre clung to the idea of being mature and rational even as he drifted toward a dirty game. Derek used booze and self-destruction to mask his despair. Jacob wrestled with the weight of having to save his friend from himself. The battles and schemes had not yet exploded into open war, but each small decision, each dark thought, each step forward or backward was quietly pushing them all closer to the edge. One misstep in the murder plan, one weeknight between Bill and Danny, one nod from Andre to Haley's proposal, or one moment when Derek finally let go, and Fairmont Crest would wake up in a reality where there were no clear lines between betrayer and victim, between those who caused the tragedy and those swallowed whole by it.